They say water has memory. It remembers every soul it's claimed, every scream it swallowed. For 23-year-old Elara Thornveil, water wasn't just her grave, it was her baptism. When her mate threw her into the frozen river and left her to drown, he thought he was disposing of a barren, wolfless girl to secure his throne. He didn't know that by condemning her to the depths, he was delivering her straight into the arms of the only creature in the realm more dangerous than death itself, the immortal Alpha King. This is the story of how a witch-marked girl drowned beneath the ice and how a dire wolf queen rose from the water to freeze their world in blood.
They say the coldest place in any kingdom isn't the dungeon or the frozen river. It's the throne room when the man you love condemns you to death. Elara stood in the center of the great hall at Ashford Castle, her wrists bound in iron, her white linen dress barely enough to ward off the December chill seeping through the ancient stone walls. Torches flickered in their sconces, casting dancing shadows across the faces of the hundreds of pack members who had gathered to witness her trial. Every eye bore into her with a mixture of pity, disgust, and morbid curiosity. Above her, the vaulted ceiling seemed to press down like the weight of their judgment. On the dais sat Rowan Ashford, Alpha Heir, looking every inch the ruler in his ceremonial furs and crown of winter oak. His auburn hair caught the firelight, his green eyes, once so warm when they looked at her, now cold as the river stones. Beside him, draped across the arm of his throne like a satisfied cat, sat Seraphine Redgrave. Her raven-black hair cascaded over her crimson gown, and her smile was a blade hidden in silk. Lord Aldric Redgrave stood to Rowan's right, the beta's silver-streaked hair and lined face lending him an air of grave authority. He held the scroll of charges like a holy text. "Elara Thornveil," Rowan's voice rang out, formal and terrible. "You stand accused of 3 crimes against this pack. Witchcraft, for you bear the mark upon your flesh, yet cannot shift. Barrenness, for in 3 years of union you have failed to conceive an heir. And deception, for you have claimed a bond that nature itself rejects." The words landed like stones. Elara's throat closed. She wanted to scream that she had tried, that she didn't understand why her wolf never came, that she had prayed every full moon for a child. But the iron around her wrists felt like the weight of inevitability. "I am your mate," she said, her voice breaking. "Your blood chose mine at the bonding ceremony. I felt it. You felt it." For a moment, just a heartbeat, something flickered in Rowan's eyes. Regret, perhaps, or memory. Then Seraphine leaned forward and whispered something in his ear, her hand possessive on his shoulder, and the moment died. "My blood made a mistake," Rowan said flatly. "I need an heir, not a curse. The pack needs strength, not this affliction you carry." Lord Aldric stepped forward, his voice dripping with false sorrow. "The evidence is damning, child. The mark on your collarbone," he gestured to the intricate silver sigil that had been on her skin since birth, "proves your darkness. No true wolf bears such a brand. It is the mark of the witch-touched, the cursed. You have brought misfortune to our Alpha, our bloodline, our very land." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Elara's legs trembled. "That mark was there when I was born. My mother said—" "Your mother is dead," Aldric cut her off smoothly, "as is your father, and convenient, is it not, that both perished before they could explain the stain on their bloodline?" The hall erupted. Accusations flew like arrows. Witch, cursed, abomination. Elara's vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall. Rowan stood, and silence crashed down. "By the ancient laws, I invoke trial by water. At dawn, Elara Thornveil will be bound and cast into the Blackwater River.
If she drowns, the river will prove her innocent, and we will mourn our error. If she survives, his jaw tightened, we will know she is witch-born, and she will burn. Either way, I die, Elara whispered. Seraphine's laugh was soft and cruel. Either way, you're gone. The guards dragged Elara toward the dungeons. As the great hall doors closed behind her, she heard Seraphine's voice drift through. Finally, now we can give the pack a real Luna. Hours later, in the darkness before dawn, Rowan came to her cell. He stood in the doorway, torch in hand, looking at her with something that might have been grief if she'd believed him capable of it any more. I loved you once, he said quietly. I did. Elara sat against the frozen stone wall, her dress torn, her hair matted. Then why? Because love doesn't feed the pack. Love doesn't secure alliances. Seraphine is strong, fertile, everything you're not. And Aldric, he's shown me what a real partnership looks like. Power, Elara. That's what matters. So you'll murder me for it? I'll do what I must. He turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, I hope you drown quickly. I don't want you to suffer. The door clanged shut. Elara pressed her forehead to her knees and let the tears come at last. By dawn, they would throw her into the frozen river. By dawn, Rowan would be free to take his precious Seraphine as Luna. But as the darkness deepened and the cold seeped into her bones, Elara made herself one promise. If the river had any mercy at all, it would make her into something they could never drown again.
Dawn came like an executioner, gray and merciless. The blizzard had intensified overnight, turning the world into a howling white void. Snow fell in thick, suffocating sheets as the procession wound its way from Ashford Castle to Blackwater Bridge, a stone crossing that spanned the frozen river at its narrowest point. Elara walked barefoot through the snow, her white death gown, thin as gossamer, meant to offer no protection, already soaked through and clinging to her shivering frame. The silver chains wrapped around her wrists and ankles burned like brands, the metal designed specifically to prevent any wolf from shifting. Not that she could shift anyway, she'd never been able to. That was why she was here. Around her, the pack followed in grim silence, their breath forming clouds in the frigid air. Wolves howled in the distance, a funeral dirge for the condemned. Children clung to their mothers' skirts, men whispered prayers to the old gods, and at the front of the procession, mounted on a massive black destrier, rode Rowan, his face a mask of stone. Seraphine rode beside him, wrapped in luxurious furs, her smile hidden but present in the cruel satisfaction of her eyes. When they reached the bridge, the crowd formed a circle. The river below was a sheet of white ice, broken only by a dark hole that had been carved specifically for this purpose. The water beneath churned black and deadly, fed by mountain snowmelt that never truly froze. Lord Aldric raised his hands, his voice carrying over the wind. "Let the river judge. Let the waters speak truth." Two guards hauled Elara forward. Her legs barely held her. The silver chains had drained what little strength she had left. When they forced her to kneel at the edge of the bridge, she looked up one last time at Rowan. He dismounted and walked to her, tradition demanding that the Alpha himself deliver the condemned. For a moment they were face to face. His green eyes met her ice-blue ones, and she saw it, the flicker of something human beneath the crown. "Forgive me," he whispered, so quietly only she could hear. "It's for the pack." "Damn you," she breathed. "Damn you and your pack." His jaw tightened. Then his hands that had once held her gently, that had traced the silver mark on her collarbone and called it beautiful, gripped her shoulders. With one brutal shove, he threw her into the abyss.
The fall seemed to last forever. Wind screamed past her ears. Snow blinded her. Then came the impact. The water hit her like 1,000 knives, cold so intense it stopped being cold and became pure agony, a burning that consumed every nerve. Her hands flailed upward, searching for the surface. Her fingers found ice, solid, impenetrable ice. She was trapped beneath it. She slammed her palms against the frozen barrier, watching distorted shapes move above. One shape stood directly above her, looking down. Rowan. Through the warped ice, she saw him watching. He didn't move, didn't try to save her. He just stood there, witnessing her death, ensuring the job was done. Her lungs burned. Her vision darkened at the edges. The current caught her, violent and uncaring, dragging her downstream. The chains scraped against river stones, battering her body. She felt ribs crack, felt her shoulder dislocate, felt the cold seeping into her bones, turning her blood to ice. She was dying. She knew it with the clarity that comes only at the end. But as the darkness closed in, as her body went numb and her heartbeat slowed to almost nothing, a spark of something fierce and primal ignited in her chest. Not acceptance, not peace. Rage. Pure, burning, infinite rage. Water has memory, she thought, as the current pulled her deeper, farther, into waters that no longer belonged to Ashford territory. Water has memory, Rowan, and when I rise from this river, if I rise, I will make you remember what you drowned. The world went black. The river carried her body like driftwood past the border markers, past the territory she'd called home, into the wild lands of the Shadow Kingdom, where ancient things still walked, and the Alpha King had ruled alone for 300 years. Her last sensation was cold, endless, absolute cold. And then, nothing.
The black wolf moved through the blizzard like a shadow given form, massive paws silent on the snow-covered riverbank. Thaddeus Blackmoor had walked these borders for 3 centuries, alone, cursed by a witch's dying words to never know the touch of a fated mate. He'd long since stopped hoping. Hope was a cruelty he could no longer afford. But tonight, something pulled at him. A disturbance in the water, a wrongness that made his ancient wolf snarl with unease. He stopped at the river's edge, amber eyes scanning the churning current. There, caught against the rocks where his territory began, something pale gleamed beneath the surface. The wolf's enhanced sight picked out the details: white fabric, silver chains, skin blue as death. A body. Thaddeus shifted, his massive wolf form rippling into the shape of a man who stood 6 feet 7 inches of corded muscle and battle scars. Obsidian black hair fell past his shoulders, and his amber eyes, the mark of ancient royalty, glowed in the pre-dawn darkness. He wore nothing but the snow falling on his bare skin, but cold had stopped meaning anything to him decades ago. Without hesitation, he dove into the freezing water. The current fought him, but he was stronger. He grabbed the body, a woman small and broken, and hauled her to shore. Silver chains wrapped around her wrists and ankles, the metal designed to suppress wolf blood. Her lips were blue, her skin like ice, her chest utterly still. Dead, then, or near enough. He laid her on the snow and brushed the wet hair from her face, intending to see if she bore any pack markings that might explain why someone had dumped a body in his river. The moment his fingers touched her cheek, the world exploded. Light, golden, searing, impossible erupted from the point of contact. Power slammed into his chest like a battering ram, and for the first time in 300 years, Thaddeus Blackmoor felt it. The bond, the pull, the recognition that every wolf spent their lives searching for. Mate.
His amber eyes flashed pure gold. The curse, the witch's curse that had bound him to solitude, that had made him unable to feel the mate bond no matter how many centuries passed, shattered. He felt it break like chains falling away, and the rush of sensation nearly brought him to his knees. "Impossible," he breathed, staring at the dying woman in his arms. "After 3 centuries? You?" She wasn't breathing. Her heart had stopped, but the bond thrummed between them, insistent and undeniable, and that meant one thing. She wasn't meant to die. Not yet. Not before he'd even learned her name. Thaddeus gathered her frozen body against his chest and ran. Shadowkeep rose from the mountainside like a fortress carved from night itself, obsidian stone and iron gates, torches burning eternal in their sconces, older than memory. He burst through the great doors, his voice echoing through ancient halls. "Morwenna!" The healer appeared within moments, an ancient wolf with silver hair and eyes that had seen the world change 1,000 times. She took one look at the woman in her arms, and her expression sharpened. "Put her by the fire, quickly." They worked through the dawn. Morwenna stripped away the wet death gown, wrapped her in furs, forced warmth back into her frozen limbs. She examined the silver chains with a frown, then the mark on the woman's collarbone, an intricate sigil that glowed faintly silver. "She's cursed," Morwenna said grimly. "Someone bound her wolf, suppressed her blood. This is old magic, deliberate. Someone wanted her powerless." "Can you break it?" demanded Thaddeus. "In time, but first let's see if she survives the night." She survived. 3 days later, Elara's eyes opened. The ceiling above her was unfamiliar, dark stone and heavy wooden beams. A fire crackled somewhere nearby, warmth seeping into bones that felt like they'd never be warm again. She tried to sit up and gasped at the pain lancing through her ribs. "Don't move." The voice was deep, commanding, and came from the shadows beside her bed. Elara turned her head. A man sat there, the most striking man she'd ever seen, tall even sitting, broad-shouldered, with obsidian black hair and a face carved from granite and war. But it was his eyes that stopped her breath, amber, glowing, ancient. "Am I dead?" she whispered. "No." He leaned forward into the firelight, and she saw the scars that mapped his chest, the raw power that radiated from him like heat. "You are in Shadowkeep. I am Thaddeus Blackmoor, Alpha King of this territory." He paused, and something impossibly vulnerable crossed his harsh features. "And you, little wolf, are my fated mate." The words hit her like a physical blow. Elara's eyes filled with tears, bitter, broken tears. "That's not possible. I already have a mate. I had a mate." "Had?" Thaddeus's voice dropped to something dangerous. "He threw me in the river." The tears spilled over, hot against her frozen cheeks. "He said his blood made a mistake choosing me. He threw me in the river and watched me drown." The temperature in the room plummeted. Thaddeus's eyes blazed pure gold, and the very air seemed to vibrate with his rage. When he spoke, his voice was a lethal promise that echoed with 3 centuries of power. "Then give me his name, little wolf, and I swear by blood and bone, by moon and shadow, he will burn for it."
The first 2 weeks passed in a haze of pain and bitter memory. Elara's body healed slowly, broken ribs knitting, frostbite receding, the near drowning leaving her lungs raw and aching. But it was the wound in her chest, the place where Rowan's betrayal had carved itself deep, that refused to close. Thaddeus was patient. He didn't press her for details, didn't demand explanations. He simply existed in her orbit like a dark star, gravitational and inescapable. He brought her meals himself, sat vigil when nightmares woke her screaming, and never once touched her without permission, though she felt the mate bond humming between them like a living thing, wanting, aching. It was Morwenna who finally shattered her understanding of everything.
The old healer appeared one morning with an armful of ancient texts, their leather covers cracked with age, their pages yellow as bone. She set them on the table beside Elara's bed and then reached forward, her gnarled fingers tracing the silver mark on Elara's collarbone. "This is no witch mark," Morwenna said quietly. "This is the Thornveil sigil." Elara blinked. "The what?" "Your family name, Thornveil. Do you know what it means?" "My parents died when I was 10. I barely remember them." Morwenna's eyes sharpened. "Hunting accident, they told you." "A wagon brake failure. They went over a cliff." "Lies." The old woman opened one of the texts, revealing an illustration of a massive wolf, silver white, easily twice the size of a normal alpha, with eyes like winter stars. The Thornveils were the first dire wolves, ancient blood, older than kingdoms. Their females were apex predators, larger, stronger, deadlier than any male. They ruled alongside their mates as equals, sometimes as superiors. Elara stared at the drawing, her heart hammering. That's not possible. I can't even shift." "Because you were cursed," Thaddeus's voice came from the doorway. He entered the room, his presence filling it like smoke. "Morwenna found traces of suppression magic woven into your blood. It was placed on you as an infant, deliberately, expertly. Someone wanted to ensure you'd never access your wolf." "Who would do that?" Morwenna pulled out another document, a birth record from the Ashford Pack archives. "You were born 23 years ago to Alpha Kaelin Thornveil and Luna Moira Thornveil. Your birth was registered by the Pack's beta at the time." She tapped the signature at the bottom. "Aldric Redgrave." The name hit Elara like a fist. "Aldric cursed me?" "He had everything to lose if you came into your power. A dire wolf female as the Alpha's daughter, you would have been unstoppable. His own ambitions for his daughter, for his bloodline, they all hinged on you never becoming a threat." Elara's hands shook. "My parents, you said the accident was a lie." Morwenna's expression softened with something like pity. "Your father discovered what had been done to you. We found his journals hidden in the Pack archives. Thaddeus's spies retrieved them. Kaelin was planning to take you to the ancient healers in the Northern Territories. He was going to break the curse." "Aldric couldn't allow that," Thaddeus finished, his voice hard as iron. "So he cut the brake lines on their wagon himself, made it look like an accident, orphaned you, and then spent the next 13 years making sure you believed you were broken." The room spun. Elara pressed her face, grief and rage warring in her chest. "He killed them. He killed my parents, and then he stood in that trial and called me cursed. Her voice broke. "He took everything from me." Thaddeus knelt beside her bed, his amber eyes level with hers. "Not everything," he said quietly. "He didn't take your blood. He didn't take your birthright, and he certainly didn't take your life, though he tried." His hand hovered near hers, not quite touching. "I can help you break this curse, Elara. I can help you become what you were always meant to be, and then I will help you take back what's yours." "Why? Why would you do this for me?" "Because you're my mate. Simple. Absolute. Because what was done to you is an abomination, and because Aldric Redgrave and his conspirators are a poison that needs cutting out." His eyes burned gold. "Help me end them, Elara. Let me train you, teach you, give you back your wolf, and in return, you help me expose their corruption to every pack in the realm." Elara looked down at her hands, small, pale, weak, the hands of a girl who'd been told her entire life she was worthless. But beneath her skin, she felt something stirring, something that had been caged and starving for 23 years. "I want them to see what they created," Elara said, her voice steady for the first time since waking. "I want them to look at me and understand exactly what they made when they tried to destroy me." Thaddeus smiled, a dark, dangerous thing. "Then let's begin." The training started that very afternoon in Shadow Keep's courtyard, snow falling soft around them. Thaddeus circled her like a predator, teaching her to move, to read an opponent, to turn weakness into weapon. When he corrected her stance, his hands on her hips sent heat racing through her. When she landed a hit, clumsy but determined, his pride radiated through the mate bond like sunlight. And when she collapsed in the snow, exhausted and aching, he lifted her effortlessly and carried her back inside, his touch gentle despite his strength. "You're not broken, little wolf," he murmured against her hair. For the first time since the river, Elara let herself believe it.
The curse-breaking ritual took place on the night of the new moon, when the veil between worlds grew thin and old magic answered more readily. They prepared the great hall of Shadowkeep, cleared the ancient stones, drew sigils in salt and silver, lit candles that burned with flames the color of starlight. Elara knelt in the center of the circle, wearing nothing but a thin shift, her silver mark exposed and glowing faintly. Morwenna stood at her back, hands hovering over her shoulders. Thaddeus knelt before her, his amber eyes locked on hers. "This will hurt," Morwenna warned. "The curse has been part of you for 23 years. Ripping it out will feel like tearing out your own bones." "Do it," Elara said. The moment Morwenna and Thaddeus channeled their power into her, Elara's world became fire. She screamed. The curse fought back, clinging to her blood like poison, like thorns driven deep into her soul. She felt it shredding, felt ancient magic warring inside her body as Morwenna's healing power and Thaddeus's raw strength battered against the suppression. Her back arched, her hands clawed at the stone, blood dripped from her nose. "I've got you!" Thaddeus's voice cut through the agony. His hands framed her face, forcing her to look at him. "Let it break, Elara. Let it shatter. I've got you." She held his gaze, those amber eyes that had become her anchor, and stopped fighting. She let the pain wash over her, let the curse tear itself apart from the inside out. With a sound like breaking glass, it shattered. Elara collapsed forward into Thaddeus's chest, gasping, shaking. He caught her, his arms iron-strong around her trembling body. She could feel something new inside her, a presence, wild and vast, that had been caged her entire life. Her wolf, finally free. The training that followed was relentless. Every dawn, Thaddeus met her in the courtyard with weapons that became extensions of her body. The sword first, a blade forged specifically for her grip, light and lethal. He taught her to fight without honor, to use speed and cunning where she lacked brute strength. "Alphas fight with rules," he said, circling her with his own blade raised. "They fight with honor, with tradition. Dire wolves fight to win. There is no honor in death, little wolf, only victory or defeat." She learned to anticipate his movements, to read the shift of his weight, the flicker of his eyes. She learned that a smaller opponent could topple a giant if she knew where to strike. They trained with daggers in close quarters, her hands learning the intimate brutality of a blade between ribs. They trained with bows in the forest, Elara's breathing slowing as she sighted down arrows at targets that became smaller, farther, more impossible, until they weren't. Thaddeus taught her to track in the snow, to read the stories written in paw prints and disturbed branches. He taught her pack dynamics, challenge rituals, the ancient laws that governed their kind. He taught her to kill efficiently, mercifully, and when mercy was a luxury they couldn't afford. And through it all, the mate bond deepened. Every touch of his hand correcting her stance sent heat through her veins. Every word of praise made her heart race. Every moment of shared silence felt like a conversation spoken in a language older than words. 3 months in, she finally bested him. It happened fast, a feint, a pivot, a move he'd taught her but hadn't expected her to perfect so soon. His sword clattered to the stones, her blade pressed against his throat, her body pinning his against the courtyard wall. They froze, both breathing hard, faces inches apart. "There she is," Thaddeus murmured, pride blazing in his amber eyes. "The Thornveil killer." Elara's gaze dropped to his lips. His hand came up to cup her jaw, thumb brushing her cheekbone. The world narrowed to the heat between them, the thundering of two hearts. A door banged open. Morwenna's voice called something about supper. The moment shattered, but the hunger remained. 6 months to the day after Thaddeus had pulled her from the river, the blood moon rose. Elara felt it the moment the crimson light touched the mountains. Her skin prickled, her bones ached. The presence inside her, her wolf, surged forward with a demand that could not be denied. She stumbled into the courtyard, gasping. Thaddeus was there instantly, his hand steadying her. "It's time," he said. The shift was agony and ecstasy in equal measure. Her bones cracked, elongating, reshaping. Her spine curved and stretched. Fur erupted across her skin, silver white, thick and lustrous, catching the blood moon's light like fresh snow. Her hands became massive paws, her face elongated into a muzzle filled with fangs designed to rend and tear. When the transformation completed, Elara stood on 4 legs for the first time in her life. She was massive, 7 feet at the shoulder, dwarfing even the largest alpha wolves. Her coat shimmered silver white, and her eyes, still ice blue, glowed with ancient power. She was ethereal and deadly, beautiful and deadly. The dire wolf threw back her head and howled. The sound rolled across the mountains like thunder, primal and triumphant. In the distance, other wolves answered, not in challenge, but in awe. Thaddeus shifted beside her. His black wolf was enormous by normal standards, powerful and battle-scarred, but next to her direwolf form, he looked almost small. He approached slowly, head lowered. Then he bowed, a gesture of respect from one apex predator to another who had surpassed him. Elara's wolf grumbled, a sound of acceptance and affection. She nuzzled his massive head, and then she ran. They ran together beneath the blood moon, 2 ancient creatures racing through snow and shadow, and for the first time since the river tried to claim her, Elara felt complete.
The ravens arrived at Shadowkeep 3 weeks before the Blood Moon Festival, bearing news from the Ashford Pack territories. Thaddeus read the reports with a grim expression before handing them to Elara. The Ashford lands were dying. Crops rotted in the fields despite the season. Game had fled the forests. Wolves grew thin and sickly, their pelts dull, their spirits broken. The river that Rowan had used as an execution ground now ran foul and brackish, poisoning everything downstream. "The land knows," Morwenna said quietly, reading over Elara's shoulder. "When a true mate bond is severed by murder, nature itself recoils. The land reflects the corruption of its ruler." Elara's fingers traced the words on the parchment. Rowan had claimed Seraphine as his Luna in a hasty ceremony, desperate to show strength. But strength built on betrayal was no strength at all. "They'll all be at the festival," Thaddeus said. "Every pack, every alpha, every scheming beta. It's neutral ground. Violence is forbidden within the castle walls." His amber eyes found hers. But the blood hunt that follows has no such restrictions. Elara felt her wolf stir beneath her skin, eager and hungry. "Then we attend." The night before they departed, Thaddeus came to her chambers. He carried a small wooden box, its surface carved with ancient wolf sigils. When he opened it, Elara's breath caught. Inside lay a necklace, a leather cord threaded through a massive dire wolf tooth, polished to gleaming ivory and etched with the Thornveil mark in silver. "This belonged to the last dire wolf queen," Thaddeus said softly.
She ruled 300 years ago, before the bloodlines thinned and the old ways faded. I've kept it all this time, waiting." He stepped closer, his hands gentle as he fastened it around her neck. The tooth rested against her collarbone, covering the Thornveil sigil like a claim. "My queen, my mate." Elara turned to face him, her hand covering his where it lingered at her throat. "Tomorrow they see what they tried to destroy." "Tomorrow," he agreed, "they learn what it means to drown a Thornveil." The Shadowkeep procession arrived at Ashford Castle like a winter storm. Dark carriages drawn by massive black destriers, guards in obsidian armor, banners bearing the ancient wolf-head sigil that predated every other pack in the realm. When the carriage door emerged, silence fell like an executioner's blade. Elara emerged first, and she was transformed. Gone was the frightened girl in a death gown. In her place stood something otherworldly, a queen carved from ice and vengeance. Her gown was midnight blue silk that flowed like water, embroidered with silver thread in patterns that formed the Thornveil sigil across her bodice and down her skirts. Her silver-blonde hair was arranged in intricate warrior braids, the style of ancient she-wolves who had led armies. The direwolf tooth gleamed at her throat, and her eyes, those ice-blue eyes that had once been soft and pleading, now held the cold fire of a winter storm. Thaddeus descended behind her, his hand immediately finding the small of her back. He wore black leather and furs that made him look every inch the immortal king, his amber eyes scanning the crowd with predatory interest. Together, they entered the great hall. The feast was already underway, long tables laden with food, fires roaring in massive hearths, wolves from a dozen packs drinking and laughing and conducting the careful politics of their kind. But as Elara and Thaddeus entered, conversation died like candles snuffed by wind. Every head turned, every eye widened. At the high table, Rowan Ashford stood so abruptly his chair clattered backward. The golden goblet in his hand slipped from nerveless fingers, clattering across the table and spilling wine like blood across the white cloth. Beside him, Seraphine rose slowly, her face a mask of disbelief that was cracking at the edges. "You're supposed to be dead," she breathed. Elara's smile was a blade wrapped in silk. She crossed the hall with lethal grace, Thaddeus a dark shadow at her side, until she stood before the high table, before Rowan, before the man who had murdered her. "The river had other plans," Elara said, her voice carrying through the deathly silent hall. Rowan's mouth worked soundlessly. His eyes darted between her face and the Thornveil sigil blazing silver on her gown. "Elara, you were dead?" She tilted her head, the gesture predatory. "Yes, you made quite sure of that, didn't you? Tell me, husband, did you miss me, or did you think the water would wash away your crime along with my body?" "You couldn't shift," Rowan stammered, his voice rising desperately. "You were barren. You were cursed." Elara cut him off. "I was cursed, Rowan. There's a difference. A curse placed on me at birth by someone who feared what I would become." Her gaze flickered to Lord Aldric, who stood frozen near the high table, his face carefully blank. "But curses can be broken, as you'll learn tomorrow, during the blood hunt." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Challenging an alpha during the blood hunt was tantamount to a declaration of war. Thaddeus stepped forward, his presence sucking the air out of the room. "Lady Elara Thornveil is under the protection of Shadow Kingdom. She is also my fated mate." The hall erupted. Voices rose in shock, in outrage, in awe. Rowan's face twisted with something between rage and terror. "This is impossible," he shouted. "She was my mate, the bond." "The bond you severed when you threw her in a river to drown," Thaddeus said softly, lethally. "Tell me, Ashford, do you know what happens to a man who murders his fated mate? The land knows. The wolves know." His smile was cold as to freeze blood. "Tomorrow, everyone will know." Elara turned to leave, Thaddeus's hand steady at her back, but at the threshold she paused once final time. Her ice-blue eyes found Rowan's green ones across the hall. "Water has memory, Rowan," she said quietly, but every wolf in the room heard her. "And tomorrow, so will blood." The doors closed behind them, leaving chaos in their wake.
Dawn broke cold and red over Thornwood Forest, the blood moon still visible as a pale ghost against the lightening sky. Elara stood at the edge of Shadowkeep's encampment, lacing the leather vambraces over her forearms. She wore hunting leathers, black and supple, designed for movement, and her silver hair was bound in a single tight braid down her back. Thaddeus approached from behind, his presence warm against the morning chill. "You don't have to do this alone," he said quietly. "I have 20 warriors who would gladly—" "No." Elara turned to face him, her ice-blue eyes blazing with purpose. "This is my throne, Thaddeus, my vengeance, my parents' justice. I need to do this myself." He studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. "Then do it as a Thornveil. Show them what they tried to erase." She reached up, pulling him down into a kiss that was fierce and claiming, tasting of promise and violence and the mate bond that thrummed between them like a war drum. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. "Come back to me," Thaddeus murmured against her lips. "Always," she promised. The horn sounded. The blood hunt had begun. Elara moved through Thornwood like a ghost, her enhanced senses tracking the nervous, erratic path Rowan and Seraphine had taken. They'd veered away from the main hunting grounds, seeking privacy, or perhaps trying to hide. Fools, you couldn't hide from a dire wolf on her own land. She found them in a clearing thick with frost, arguing in hushed, frantic voices. "How is she alive?" Seraphine hissed, pacing like a caged animal. "You said she drowned. You watched her die." "I did," Rowan's voice cracked with panic. "She went under the ice. She didn't come back up. And now she's here, claiming she can shift, wearing the Thornveil mark like the heir she always was." Elara stepped from the shadows, her voice cutting through their argument like a blade through silk. "Hello, my love. Miss me?" Rowan spun, his hand going to the hunting knife at his belt. Seraphine stumbled backward, eyes wide with terror. Elara walked forward slowly, deliberately. "I, Elara Thornveil, daughter of Alpha Kaelin and Luna Moira, challenge you, Rowan Ashford, to the Alpha throne of these lands, to the death or submission, as the ancient laws demand." "You can't," Rowan breathed. "You're not even Pack anymore. You were exiled, executed." "I was murdered," Elara corrected, "but I'm very hard to kill, as it turns out. Now shift, Rowan. Show me the strength you chose over our bond." She didn't wait for his response. Her shift was instantaneous now, perfected through months of practice. Bone and flesh rippled, reformed. Silver-white fur erupted across her skin. Within seconds, the massive direwolf stood where the woman had been. 7 feet of lethal grace and ancient power, ice-blue eyes glowing in the dawn light. Rowan's face went slack with horror. "What are you?" His guards, 4 wolves who'd been trailing at a distance, burst into the clearing. They took one look at Elara's direwolf form, and their instincts overrode their loyalty. They dropped to their bellies, throats exposed, whining in submission. Apex predator, ancient blood. They couldn't fight her any more than they could fight the moon itself. Rowan had no choice. He shifted, a decent-sized gray wolf, strong by normal standards, but next to Elara he looked like a pup challenging its mother. He lunged anyway, desperation making him stupid. Elara sidestepped with contemptuous ease. Her massive paw caught him mid-leap, slamming him into the frozen ground hard enough to crack ribs. He yelped, scrambling away, and she let him, toying with him, letting him understand how thoroughly outmatched he was.
He tried again. She caught him by the scruff of his neck, her jaws closing around his throat, not biting down, just holding him there, helpless and choking. She could feel his pulse thundering against her teeth. One flex of her jaw, and he'd be dead. But she wanted him alive, wanted him to live with this. She threw him. He hit an oak tree with a sickening crunch and collapsed, shifting back to human form. Blood ran from his nose, his mouth. His left arm hung at an unnatural angle. "I submit! Mercy! I submit!" he gasped, curling into himself. Elara shifted back to human, standing over him naked and unashamed, every inch the predator. "Mercy," Elara repeated coldly. "Did you show me mercy when you threw me in the river?" Seraphine tried to run. Elara was faster. She caught the other woman by the arm, spinning her around. "Not so fast. We're not finished." She looked at the guards, still cowering. "Witnesses. Good. You'll tell everyone what you hear today." She turned back to Seraphine, leaning close, inhaling deeply. "Tell them about the curse, Seraphine. Tell them how your father poisoned me from birth. I don't know what you're—" "And tell them," Elara continued, her voice dropping to something deadly, "that you're not pregnant. You never were. I can smell it. There's no second heartbeat, no life growing, just lies and manipulation." Seraphine's face crumbled. "It was my father," she sobbed, breaking completely. "He planned everything, the curse, the conspiracy, convincing Rowan you were worthless. He wanted our bloodline on the throne. He wanted—" Elara finished. "He wanted my parents dead. And now you'll tell that to everyone." A rustling in the trees. Thaddeus emerged from the shadows, flanked by Shadow Kingdom warriors. Behind them came representatives from other packs, witnesses drawn by the sounds of combat, by the howl of a direwolf, by history being made. Thaddeus surveyed the scene, Rowan broken and bleeding, Seraphine weeping, the guards in submission, and Elara standing victorious in the center of it all. Under ancient law, the Ashford throne is forfeit. The challenge has been won. The Alpha has submitted. His amber eyes found Elara's, blazing with pride. "All hail Elara Thornveil!" And in the frost-covered clearing, surrounded by witnesses and enemies brought low, Elara finally allowed herself to smile.
The convoy that returned to Ashford Castle was nothing like the execution procession that had left it 6 months prior. This time, wolves from a dozen packs followed, drawn by rumors of a dire wolf risen, of ancient justice about to be served. The crowd that gathered in the courtyard was massive. Every pack member who could walk had come, their faces gaunt with hunger, their eyes hollow with the suffering of living under a cursed rule. Whispers rippled through them like wind through dead grass. "The drowned witch lives. She's the Thornveil heir. I saw her shift. She's massive, silver as moonlight. The old blood has returned." Elara dismounted from her horse, Thaddeus at her side. She wore black leather and the dire wolf tooth at her throat, her silver braid hanging down her back like a war banner. Behind her, Shadow Kingdom warriors dragged Rowan and Seraphine in silver chains. Lord Aldric had been found attempting to flee and was now bound and gagged, his eyes wild with the panic of a cornered rat. The great hall filled to bursting. Elara walked the center aisle, and the crowd parted for her, not in fear this time, but in something closer to reverence. She ascended the dais and stood before the Alpha's throne. She did not sit, not yet. "I am Elara Thornveil," her voice rang clear and strong through the hall, "daughter of Alpha Caelan Thornveil and Luna Moira Thornveil. 6 months ago, I was accused of witchcraft, condemned for being barren and wolfless, and thrown into the Blackwater River to drown." She paused, letting the words sink in. "I was cursed, betrayed, and left for dead, but I survived, and now I bring you truth."
She gestured, and the guards dragged Lord Aldric forward, forcing him to his knees. Morwenna stepped from the shadows, ancient and terrible, carrying scrolls and vials of evidence. Lord Aldric Redgrave, you stand accused of conspiracy, murder, and treason against the Thornveil bloodline. They removed his gag. Aldric's face was a mask of false indignation. This is absurd. I have served this pack faithfully for— You cursed me at birth, Elara cut him off. When my parents, the true Alpha and Luna, celebrated my arrival, you saw a threat. The Thornveils carried dire wolf blood, ancient blood, blood that would make me stronger than any Alpha, including your daughter's future mate. She nodded to Morwenna. The old healer stepped forward, holding up a vial of dark liquid. Wolf's bane, distilled and modified, the same poison found in Elara's blood. I traced its origins to Lord Aldric's private stores he's maintained for 23 years. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Aldric's face paled. You cursed me at birth, Elara continued. When my parents, the true Alpha and Luna, celebrated my arrival, you saw a threat. The Thornveils carried dire wolf blood, ancient blood, blood that would make me stronger than any Alpha, including your daughter's future mate. She nodded to Morwenna. The old healer stepped forward, holding up a vial of dark liquid. Wolf's bane, distilled and modified, the same poison found in Elara's blood. I traced its origins to Lord Aldric's private stores he's maintained for 23 years. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Aldric's face paled. You cursed me at birth, Elara continued. When my parents, the true Alpha and Luna, celebrated my arrival, you saw a threat. The Thornveils carried dire wolf blood, ancient blood, blood that would make me stronger than any Alpha, including your daughter's future mate. She nodded to Morwenna. The old healer stepped forward, holding up a vial of dark liquid. Wolf's bane, distilled and modified, the same poison found in Elara's blood. I traced its origins to Lord Aldric's private stores he's maintained for 23 years. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Aldric's face paled. You cursed me at birth, Elara continued. When my parents, the true Alpha and Luna, celebrated my arrival, you saw a threat. The Thornveils carried dire wolf blood, ancient blood, blood that would make me stronger than any Alpha, including your daughter's future mate. She nodded to Morwenna. The old healer stepped forward, holding up a vial of dark liquid. Wolf's bane, distilled and modified, the same poison found in Elara's blood. I traced its origins to Lord Aldric's private stores he's maintained for 23 years. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Aldric's face paled. You cursed me at birth, Elara continued. When my parents, the true Alpha and Luna, celebrated my arrival, you saw a threat. The Thornveils carried dire wolf blood, ancient blood, blood that would make me stronger than any Alpha, including your daughter's future mate. She nodded to Morwenna. The old healer stepped forward, holding up a vial of dark liquid. Wolf's bane, distilled and modified, the same poison found in Elara's blood. I traced its origins to Lord Aldric's private stores he's maintained for 23 years. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Aldric's face paled. You cursed me at birth, Elara continued. When my parents, the true Alpha and Luna, celebrated my arrival, you saw a threat. The Thornveils carried dire wolf blood, ancient blood, blood that would make me stronger than any Alpha, including your daughter's future mate. She nodded to Morwenna. The old healer stepped forward, holding up a vial of dark liquid.
Wolf's bane, distilled and modified, the same poison found in Elara's blood. I traced its origins to Lord Aldric's private stores, stores he's maintained for 23 years. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Aldric's face paled. You cursed me at birth, Elara continued. When my parents, the true Alpha and Luna, celebrated my arrival, you saw a threat. The Thornveils carried dire wolf blood, ancient blood, blood that would make me stronger than any Alpha, including your daughter's future mate. She nodded to Morwenna. The old healer stepped forward, holding up a vial of dark liquid. Wolf's bane, distilled and modified, the same poison found in Elara's blood. I traced its origins to Lord Aldric's private stores, stores he's maintained for 23 years. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Aldric's face paled. You cursed me at birth, Elara continued. When my parents, the true Alpha and Luna, celebrated my arrival, you saw a threat. The Thornveils carried dire wolf blood, ancient blood, blood that would make me stronger than any Alpha, including your daughter's future mate. She nodded to Morwenna. The old healer stepped forward, holding up a vial of dark liquid. Wolf's bane, distilled and modified, the same poison found in Elara's blood. I traced its origins to Lord Aldric's private stores, stores he's maintained for 23 years. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Aldric's face paled. You cursed me at birth, Elara continued. When my parents, the true Alpha and Luna, celebrated my arrival, you saw a threat. The Thornveils carried dire wolf blood, ancient blood, blood that would make me stronger than any Alpha, including your daughter's future mate. She nodded to Morwenna. The old healer stepped forward, holding up a vial of dark liquid. Wolf's bane, distilled and modified, the same poison found in Elara's blood. I traced its origins to Lord Aldric's private stores, stores he's maintained for 23 years. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Aldric's face paled. You cursed me at birth, Elara continued. When my parents, the true Alpha and Luna, celebrated my arrival, you saw a threat. The Thornveils carried dire wolf blood, ancient blood, blood that would make me stronger than any Alpha, including your daughter's future mate. She nodded to Morwenna. The old healer stepped forward, holding up a vial of dark liquid. Wolf's bane, distilled and modified, the same poison found in Elara's blood. I traced its origins to Lord Aldric's private stores, stores he's maintained for 23 years. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Aldric's face paled. You cursed me at birth, Elara continued. When my parents, the true Alpha and Luna, celebrated my arrival, you saw a threat. The Thornveils carried dire wolf blood, ancient blood, blood that would make me stronger than any.
The highest tower of Ashford Castle had stood for 500 years, weathering storms and sieges and the rise and fall of bloodlines. Tonight, beneath the rising blood moon, it would witness the binding of two kingdoms and two souls that had found each other in the darkest of waters. Elara stood on the balcony, her hands resting on the ancient stone parapet, looking out over lands that were hers again. Below, torches lit the courtyard where thousands had gathered, her pack, Thaddeus's pack, wolves from allied territories, all waiting to witness what came next. The wind carried the scent of pine and snow, and something else, something green and alive that hadn't been present 6 months ago. The land was already healing. She felt Thaddeus approach before she heard him, the mate bond humming between them like a living thing. His arms wrapped around her waist from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder, and for a moment they simply stood there, two ancient creatures watching the moon rise over a kingdom reclaimed.
Regrets? He asked quietly. Elara's lips curved into a dark smile. Only that I didn't drown him, too. Thaddeus's laugh was low and rich, vibrating through her back. There's my queen. She turned in his arms, looking up at the face that had become home, all sharp angles and amber eyes, and 3 centuries of patience finally rewarded. Are you sure about this? Binding yourself to me? To this kingdom? You were free before I dragged you into my vengeance. I was cursed before you broke it, he corrected, his hand coming up to cup her jaw. I was alone before you became my everything. Freedom means nothing without someone to share it with. His thumb brushed across her lips. I would drown 1,000 times if it meant finding you again. The first chime of the ceremony bells echoed across the castle. It was time. They descended to the courtyard where Morwenna waited, ancient and knowing, dressed in ceremonial robes that predated written history. The pack formed a circle around a raised stone dais, the same stones where medieval wolves had bound their souls for millennia. Torches burned with flames that needed no fuel, magic old as the moon itself. Elara and Thaddeus stepped onto the dais, facing each other beneath the blood moon's crimson light. Morwenna raised her arms, her voice carrying across the gathered masses. We stand beneath the blood moon to witness the binding of mates, the union of kingdoms, the fulfillment of ancient prophecy. Let those who would pledge speak now. Thaddeus took Elara's hands in his amber eyes blazing gold. I, Thaddeus Blackmoor, Alpha King of the Shadow Realm, pledge my life, my kingdom, my eternity to Elara Thornveil. My blood is your blood, my strength is your strength, my crown is yours to wear or cast aside. I am yours, from this breath to the last and beyond death itself. Elara's voice was steady, though her heart thundered. I, Elara Thornveil, last of the direwolves, Alpha Queen of Ashford, accept your pledge and give you mine, as your mate, your queen, your equal. What was broken is made whole. What was cursed is made sacred. I am yours, Thaddeus Blackmoor, in this life and whatever comes after. Morwenna produced a silver chalice and a ceremonial blade. She cut Thaddeus's palm first, then Elara's, mixing their blood in the ancient cup. They drank in turn, the taste of copper and magic and forever on their tongues. The marking, Morwenna commanded. They shifted partially, a skill only the ancient wolves possessed. Elara's canines elongated, her eyes flashing ice blue. Thaddeus's did the same, amber bleeding to gold. He bared her shoulder, and she bared his. They bit down simultaneously. The pain was exquisite and brief, but the sensation that followed, the mate bond snapping fully into place, no longer tentative but absolute, was like nothing else in existence. Golden light exploded from where they stood, washing over the crowd, over the castle, over the lands themselves. The blood moon pulsed above them, and the land responded. Snow melted where it shouldn't, revealing green shoots pushing through thawed earth. The river that had run foul and poisoned suddenly cleared, water sparkling clean in the moonlight. Trees that had stood bare and dying suddenly budded with new growth. The air itself seemed to sigh with relief, as if nature itself had been holding its breath, waiting for this moment. The pack erupted. Thousands of voices lifted in howls that shook the mountains, not in challenge or mourning, but in pure, joyous unity. Thaddeus pulled Elara against him, his mouth claiming hers in a kiss that was both savage and tender, a promise and a demand. She kissed him back with everything she was, the girl who had drowned, the wolf who had risen, the queen who would rule for centuries to come. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Thaddeus rested his forehead against hers, murmuring loud enough for her only to hear. Now, my queen, we rule. The celebration lasted until dawn, but long before then, Elara and Thaddeus retreated to the Alpha's chambers, her parents' rooms, cleansed and reclaimed. As Thaddeus carried her over the threshold, Elara looked back one last time at the kingdom spread below, at the people who had finally seen her for what she was. They ruled for 3 centuries after that night, the Silver Queen and the Shadow King, legends whispered around fires and written into the histories of every pack. Under their reign, the wolves knew peace and prosperity and power like never before. The lands flourished, the packs grew strong, and no one ever dared threaten a Thornveil again. Elara never forgot the water's memory. On cold winter nights, she would stand by the Blackwater River and remember the girl who had sunk beneath the ice. She would remember Rowan's face watching her drown, and she would smile, because that girl was dead, drowned and reborn into something infinitely more dangerous. Rowan lived out his days in Omega servitude, cleaning the halls where he'd once ruled, serving the queen he'd tried to destroy. Some called it mercy, Elara called it justice. Every day he lived was a reminder of what he'd lost, what he'd thrown away, what he could never reclaim. The last Thornveil proved that curses can be broken, that drowning can be rebirth, and that the river remembers everything you tried to wash away. And she proved beyond any doubt that true mates are worth dying for and worth killing for. Water has memory. So does blood, and both, in the end, always tell the truth.
What an incredible journey! I got chills when Elara transformed into that massive dire wolf and Rowan realized what he'd thrown away. The Silver Queen's revenge was everything. Here's my question for you. Do you think Rowan and Seraphine deserved to live as Omegas, serving Elara for the rest of their lives? Or should she have executed them alongside Lord Aldric? Was mercy stronger than vengeance, or was watching them suffer the greater punishment? Drop your verdict in the comments below. If you loved this tale of betrayal, resurrection, and dire wolf justice, smash that like button. It helps this channel grow. Subscribe for more epic werewolf romance stories with alpha kings, fated mates, and queens who take back their crowns. Hit the bell so you never miss the next saga. Thanks for joining me in the Shadow Kingdom, and I'll see you in the next story.